Shalom. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahawashi, Bahashem, Rakha Kodash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, because those are the men who I learned this truth from through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahawashi. Yahweh is the true name of the God of Israel. Yahawashi is who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, but his one and only true name is Yahawashi. And pretty much, once again, every year, the Lord has a higher level of false prophets being revealed and being exposed as well. Guys that you thought could have possibly been men of the Lord, but it turns out that they're hirelings coming in the same stead as guys like Nate, Nathaniel, when he sold out and changed his name from Nathaniel to Nathaniel with that EL. Now you're seeing something similar, but on an even higher level in the form of Deacon Hakar and so-called Brother Hassad, concerning their new ministry group, TGC Ministries, all right? And they're pretty much teaching that the Lashawan Kodash, which is the Holy Tongue, the Paleo Hebrew, they're trying to say that us Hebrew Israelites that believe that the true name of the Lord, Yahweh, the Father of spirits, as well as his only begotten Son, the Messiah, Yahawashi, that using those names is added unto the word. And now we're in violation of Deuteronomy 4:2, as well as Revelation, the 22nd chapter, where it says if you add unto the words that's already written, the Lord is going to add plagues unto you. Which, these guys are very ignorant. And see, this is why the truth is deeper than just doing news videos. You got to really learn. You have to really study so you could defend the gospel. Doing news videos, that's a part of the truth, but you still have to teach Israel. You still got to do other type of videos, whether it's character building lessons, whether it's exhortation videos, motivational videos to keep the faith, sharing videos or doing videos about your testimonies, how the Lord deliver you, teaching our people how to break down the scriptures, going through chapter breakdowns. See, this is why you have a body. This is why you have the body of Yahawashi that specializes in different things. All right, because if you unlearn, you can't defend the gospel against TGC Ministries, against so-called Brother Assad and so-called Deacon Hakar, because you don't study, you don't do those type of videos like that. So in this lesson, I'm just going to be showing you, look, this revived modern Hebrew that Ben Yahudi came out with, our forefathers, they wasn't speaking this modern Hebrew. They wasn't speaking this language during the Roman Empire, the Babylonian Empire. They wasn't speaking this in ancient Israel, this modern Hebrew. So we're going to go over it because I got this book here, and I'm going to show it on the screen. I'm going to pause this. I'm going to merge the videos together. But I got this book here. It's called Lashawan Kodash, Paleo Hebrew Concise Dictionary. And we're going to briefly go over the Aramaic. We're going to briefly go over the ancient Paleo Hebrew and compare it to modern Hebrew. All right? So, without further ado, I'm going to read some precepts, and then I'm going to show you this book that I have, which is going to completely destroy everything that Hakar is saying about adding unto the word. First of all, before you even read the book of Genesis, there's a page before you read Genesis, the first chapter, and it says translated out of the original tongues. If you add in consonants and dots and the Nakud and all that shit that they have in the modern Hebrew, that's not the original tongue. The original tongue will have to be the ancient Paleo Hebrew. All right, that's just common sense. That's the Hebrews talk about. It's not talk about Syrian Aramaic Hebrew. It's not talk about modern Ben Yahudi Hebrew. It's talking about the Paleo Hebrew. That's how you will call upon the name of the Father and the Son. All right, look at the Dead Sea Scrolls. But anyways, that's read some scriptures I got here. This is Luke 21 and 15. Because when you see these guys make false doctrines, you can't just skip over it. You got to learn how to defend it. If you don't know how to properly break down something, then learn it. Study, take notes, and defend your God, defend your Messiah. You can't do that if you don't study and know the breakdowns or do research. This is Luke 21 and 15. For I will give you a mouth and wisdom. All right, this is what the Lord first told his disciples. All right, in a different minute of the Lord that you read about in the New Testament, but it applies to right now as well. All right, it applied back then, it applies right now, because we have access to the Holy Spirit through Yahweh's blood and sacrifice. All right, the Lord is dealing with us. He has an actual angel that's working on all of our minds to be able to break down these scriptures properly without it being a private interpretation. All right, so the Lord has given us a mouth and wisdom, aka the Holy Spirit, which is the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of the scriptures, which all your adversaries, right, the 17 heathen nations, as well as unbelieving Israelites, that's not predestinated unto salvation. It says, shall not be able to gainsay nor resist. Let's read that in the NLT. This is Luke 21 and 15. It says, for I will give you the right words and such wisdom that none of your opponents will be able to reply or refute you. After I'm done with this video, there's absolutely nothing that anybody could say and what I'm going to bring out. And all I'm doing is defending the gospel. All right? I mean, that's common sense to know that modern Hebrew is not the same as Paleo Hebrew. That the name of the Lord will have to be found in the 22 characters of the ancient Paleo Hebrew. His name ain't Yahshua. It ain't El. It ain't Elohim. It ain't that shit. All right? So now, let me get one more precept. This is Baruch, which Baruch, he was a scribe of Jeremiah. Baruch chapter 2 and verse 32 and 31. It says, and shall know that I am the Lord their God, for I will give them, the elect of the nation of Israel, and heart, meaning a mind, and ears to hear. Hear who? The prophets, which are your gods, which are the apostles of Great Millstone on down. All right? You're supposed to learn the breakdowns from them. You're supposed to learn how to break down the scriptures from them. The same type of style, how they be teaching, you're supposed to do that. You're supposed to be studying. You're supposed to be defending your God. All right? You see a dude going off, defend your God. Defend the Messiah. Defend the truth. All right? These dudes are light work because they're going against the truth. So if you go against the truth, you're going to get debunked. You're going to get exposed. You're going to lose. It says, for I will give them an heart and ears to hear. The Lord is doing that through Yahweh. It says, and they shall praise me in the land of their captivity. How you going to praise the name of the Lord or the name of the Heavenly Father and His only begotten Son in the name of, in the modern Hebrew alphabet? In English, Latin, Greek, any other language outside of Paleo Hebrew. That's literally the only alphabet to where you can get the name of the Lord, all right, out of the ancient Paleo Hebrew alphabet. You're not going to find it in English. Oh, but the transliteration, man, fuck the transliteration. His name is only found in the ancient Paleo Hebrew, all right? You're not praising the Lord by calling him Jesus or God or El or Elohim or Donai or whatever stupid transliterated name they got, all right? Praise me in the land of their captivity and think upon my name. How you gonna think upon the name of the Lord? By knowing the Paleo Hebrew, not modern Hebrew. Modern Hebrew ain't Hebrew. All right. So now, without further ado, I'm gonna record this book that I have, and we're gonna read along in this YASHARAHLA Kodash Paleo Hebrew Concise Dictionary. And I had this book for like over a year. I got it from eBay. I showed a couple brothers. But, now the Lord put the spirit on me. He gave me the heart to finally do a lesson using it. So without further ado, check this out. All right, so this is the book right here, Ha Lashawan Kodash, Paleo Hebrew Concise Dictionary. All right, so we're gonna read a little bit about this. Go get into it. It's a very good book. You can see everything it deals with up in here. Lord willing, I'll do lessons on all of this in the future, you know, Lord willing. Now, see, this is some more, you know, it deals with. So this is the prologue, right? I'm gonna read this. It says the prologue, Salaki, a little windy by the water where I'm at. You could also pause the screen and read it yourself. It says the prologue of the wisdom of Yahushua, the son of Sirach, whereas many and great things have been delivered unto us by the law and the prophets and by others that have followed their steps, for the which things YASHARAHLA ought to be commended for learning and wisdom, and whereof not only the readers must needs become skillful themselves, but also they that desire to learn be able to profit them which are without, both by speaking and writing. It says, my grandfather Yahushua, right? It says, Salaki, trying to keep the page steady. I don't normally screen record no more like that. All right. But continuing on, it says, which he had much given himself to the reading of the law and the prophets and other books of our fathers, and had gotten therein good judgment, was drawn on also himself to write something pertaining to learning and wisdom, to the intent that those which are desirous to learn, which are addicted to these things, might profit much more in living according to the law. Wherefore let me entreat you to read it with favor and attention, and to pardon us wherein we may seem to come short of some words which we have labored to interpret. And see, this is why guys like Ben Yahudi and that Amalekite, you know, councils they was having back during those times, the Masoretes, their thing is the name of the Most High is too sacred to utter, or we lost the ways how to vocalize and pronounce the Paleo Hebrew, so we're going to add the Nakud to it. We're going to add dots, and we're going to change it up a little bit and revive it according to our liking. But they're not refreshing or reviving anything. They came up with their own language. All right? Continuing on. It says, for the same things uttered in Hebrew and translated into another tongue have not the same force in them. It's a big difference between Yahushua, which sounds right, all right, compared to Yahshua, a name that everybody call upon. The name of the Lord ain't exclusive like that. You think a lot of people call upon the name Yahushua? Yahushua is an exclusive, exotic name compared to Yahshua and Jesus and any other name that's wrong or so-called transliterated. It says, for the same things uttered in Hebrew and translated into another tongue have not the same force in them, because it's different. It's different words. It says, and not only these things, but the law itself and the prophets and the rest of the books have no small difference when they are spoken in their own language. For in the 38th year, coming into Egypt, when Erigetes was king, and continuing there some time, I found a book of no small learning. Therefore, I thought it most necessary for me to bestow some diligence and travail to interpret it, using great watchfulness and skill in that space, to bring the book to an end and set it forth for them also, which in a strange country, talk about Israelite foreigners, right, aka the Gentiles, the uncircumcision, are willing to learn, being prepared before in manners to live after the law, always and cometh from the Lord and is with him forever. Exactly. All right. So I'm going to read a couple of these pages because it's going to go into some history. All right. So, continuing on. right? It says, so this is the prefix, right? It says, there are a number of variations of Hebrew script that you may have stumbled upon at some point or another during your lifetime this far. One in particular, modern Hebrew, contemporarily being the most common seen and used. Although we will discover the history of variations, it says history of various versions of so-called Hebrew script, the style of Hebrew we are most concerned with in this book is known as Paleo Hebrew. It says, or Proto-Hebrew, which was in use by the ancient Israelites during points of the 8th and 7th centuries BCE, right? So what you see right here is a Judean half shekel. It says image courtesy of classical, a lot of wind over here, numismatic or numismatic group Inc. All right. It says, but the most decisive confirmation of this point to be found in ancient Hebrew coins, which were struck before the Babylonian captivity, and even engraved on all of them, are manifestly the same with modern Samaritan. All right. And it says Thomas Harwell, 1854. But you can see it's Paleo Hebrew. It ain't modern Hebrew, right? You don't see no dots and all that. Anyways, continuing on. It says, during the 6th century BCE, which came about to be the time of the Babylonian exile of the Israelites, the Paleo Hebrew alphabet was progressively changed, implementing the use of the Imperial Aramaic alphabet, which is notably comparable in appearance to the modern Hebrew most commonly acknowledged today. So what you got to understand is, right, you have a lot of controversy. They'll say, oh, well, Yahushua, he spoke Aramaic. You know, he was speaking Hebrew. I mean, he's a Lord. He could speak and understand all languages, obviously. He's a Lord, all right? But Aramaic is not Paleo Hebrew, though, all right? The Hebrew that the Lord would speak would be the Paleo Hebrew, all right? Could he understand and communicate with Israelite foreigners or other Israelites that may have spoke Aramaic during that time? Duh, of course. Why wouldn't he be able to do that? All right? But he spoke Paleo Hebrew, though. Continuing on. It says, while the Paleo Hebrew alphabet perpetuated to be utilized on a constraint substructure into the 1st century AD. During the 4th century BC, the ancient Israelites commenced utilizing the Aramaic alphabet in like of the Paleo Hebrew. So what they're trying to say is during the Babylonian exile, that's when we started speaking Aramaic, because the scriptures also said, because the Lord told Jeremiah in Jeremiah 17:4 that we would discontinue from our heritage. What happened during the Babylonian captivity? We started getting surnames, all right? That's a prelude to what you see during the Greek captivity and the Roman Empire. And right now, we getting Greek names, Latin names, all right? Babylonian names, American names, wherever we've been scattered at, right? So that was a prelude for what's to come. Continuing on. So it says, Aramaic alphabet and like of Paleo Hebrew script, since they were compelled to do so by force from their oppressors, initially by the Babylonians. All right. Let's read that last part. It says, about 2 centuries after the termination of the Babylonian captivity, and while a considerable number of persons still continued to speak more Hebrew as their vernacular dialect, Asia was invaded by people who had introduced into the original alphabet the vast improvement of vowel letters, and the Jews were, in consequence, right, forced in spite of their prejudices to learn a species of writing that made them acquainted with the use of such letters. All right, let's go to the next page. Trying to speed up before anybody come back here. It's like a nice little spot. So anyways, right, trying to keep it like that. So page 12, it says the vowel letters in the text of the Hebrew Bible and grounds thence derive for a revision of its authorized English version. And this is by an individual named Charles William Wool in 1857. Examples of a translation and usage of script characters can be optically discerned in most of the Dead Sea Scrolls. The vast majority of these scrolls were indited utilizing the Aramaic alphabet. However, there were a few that were still inscribed utilizing the Paleo Hebrew script, some of which exclusively inditing the designation of the name of the Most High in the Paleo Hebrew, among otherwise Aramaic inscribing was withal conspicuous in some cases. And you can see the Dead Sea Scrolls right there. It says portion of the Dead Sea Scrolls with Yahweh's name exclusively in Proto-Hebrew or Paleo-Hebrew, right? And you can see it right there. It stands out too. It says, when it comes to artifacts of Hebrew scripts, they don't always provide evidence of the preservation of the original Hebrew dialect, but rather more so betokens the dialect utilized at the particular time attributed to creation of the artifact. And this is by an individual named Fred P. Miller. Supports this below. As you can see down here, you know, that's what he said. Right? You can read that if you want to read that. I just want to read the parts in black. It says, in the late 19th century, Zionists, which are Edomites, and what's a Zionist? Anybody that supports the state of Israel, right? It says, for all the intents and purposes, have been determined to somewhat revive, right? Because that was what Ben Yahudi did, revive Hebrew. So it says, however, more so initially create a new Hebrew language. So this is what you got to understand. You're using words like Yahshua, Yehoshua, whatever you think that is, it's not Hebrew. It don't matter what name you're using outside of Yahawashi and Yahweh. Those are not the names. All right. Continuing on. So it says, more so essentially create a new Hebrew language to be the main, it says Jewish language, or really what it's referring to is the Edomite converts that's in that Zionist created state of Israel. This is the language they speak. Our forefathers wasn't speaking this. Yahawashi wasn't speaking this. All right, King David wasn't speaking this. The 12 disciples wasn't speaking modern Hebrew. It says, to be the main Jewish language in the land of modern Israel. The original dialect of Hebrew by then hadn't been utilized in everyday verbalization by true Semitic people in the land of Israel for over 1,000 years. It says, for the most part, the Zionists comb the Bible and Talmud for precedents as they probe to discover phrases to populate their incipient national language. This is page 13, continue on with, they prosper in creating the modern Hebrew language as we know it to be to this very day. Now, contrary to popular belief, the modern Hebrew language is one of a kind and visibly differentiable from traditional biblical Hebrew, both in syntax and pronunciation. Thus, the very language itself, because it's an entirely different language, modern Hebrew. It says, many maintain that the incipient language of modern Hebrew is not identically tantamount to the Lashon HaKodesh, the holy language. Page 14 now. It says the abomination of the integration of vowel systems into Proto-Hebrew, right? Proto-Hebrew being Paleo-Hebrew, the first Hebrew, right? It says Proto-Hebrew never had a vowel system for representing inscribed vowels. The language only consisted of 22 consonant letters and never showed any signs in earlier artifacts or manuscripts of its utilization of any vowel systems of any sort in any ancient Hebrew literature. However, later on, with the unwarranted, unwelcome outside influence from the foreign nations and transmutes to the language, vowel systems were introduced and imposed. These systems came first by utilizing subsisting Hebrew script characters to represent vowels in some selective cases. And as you can see there, they got that parentheses. And then later being transmuted to systems utilizing dashes and dots to denote vowels above and underneath Hebrew characters, the nikud dot, right? That's what they call it, the nikud dot, right? Which these are things that they introduce with their modern Hebrew. It says, yet the Jews, who were particularly averse to holding any communication with pagans, cannot be supposed to have adopted this improvement till they were compelled to learn the benefit of it by being subjected to the dominion of the Greeks. But all their accent coins exhibit either wa or yod or both of these letters employed as vowel sounds, and therefore each must have been stamped subsequently to the period when they came under the yoke of that people. Proofs of interpolation of the vowel letters in the text of the Hebrew Bible and grounds thence derived for a revision of its authorized English version. And this is by Charles William Wool in 1857. It says, consequently, we can already rightfully postulate that any version of Hebrew that makes utilization of any vowel systems cannot represent authentic Paleo-Hebrew inscription. Meaning what? Yahshua is not the name. Yehoshua. Any transliteration or derivation of Yahshua and anything like that, that's not his name. His name is Yahawashi. Alright? The only way you're going to find that is by matching up Joshua's name in the Paleo-Hebrew, match it up with the characters, it's going to spell out Yahawashi. Alright? It's that simple. I'm going to do a video on it. Continuing on. It says, it says, authentic Paleo-Hebrew inscription, nor dialect, since those transmutations were introduced through the influence of other nations who verbalized completely foreign languages from the ancient Israelites, thus utilizing different sounds to engender the words of their respective tongues. Exactly. So just based off of that alone, Yahshua ain't the name. Alright? You gotta watch these guys. They going from Lashwan Kodash to the white man Hebrew. Come on, man. You gotta be kidding me. It says, continuing on. It says Mazara and Martis Lescinis, right? Which sounds like a Latin phrase. It says the Mazara, otherwise spelled Mizara, customarily refers either to the preservation and passing on of the Jewish religious tradition, and may refer to the rules concerning vowel systems and points, in particular the nikud dot, concerning the rules for translation utilizing vowel systems, specifically the Masoretic text, which was engendered from these rules, is considered to be the authoritative text of the Tanakh for Rabbinic Judaism, or when they want to go into the law of Moses, right? It says, make it a little smaller. It says, albeit we have already briefly touched upon, and I will further discuss continuously. I mention once again that Proto-Hebrew, prior to its deconstruction, did not have any vowels or any system for representing them of any fashion in any of its literature. In the same way that you can utilize English letters to inscribe in the Spanish lexicon, as well as many other languages where the characters may have had some cognation, yet pronunciation and syntax, thus the language itself became very different. So Paleo Hebrew and modern Hebrew is totally different languages. All right. So what these guys are trying to do at TGC Ministries concerning Deacon Haka and Brother Assad, well, Assad is an Arabic name anyway. All right. What they're trying to do is they're trying to disrupt your faith and spread confusion by saying that the Edomite version that they came up with under Ben Yehudi, ultimately, that's the real Hebrew, when that don't make any sense. All right. It says such a concept is identically tantamount in this case. Page 15, continuing on, concerning foreign languages being projected and imposed onto Hebrew language and its respective characters. 1000 AD was literally just short of a millennium after the death of the Israelites' Messiah and the scattering of Israelites from their homeland throughout the known world in 70 AD. Some as slaves, where their homeland would be subject to the foreigners, thus the Gentiles, until the times of the Gentiles as the scriptures outlaid very plainly. It says, an entire millennium after the devastating occasion, a group of Jewish converted scribes called Masoretes developed a system of dots and dashes called the Nakud dot, which in parentheses it says singular is Nakud, right? It says that were placed above and below the letters to represent vowel sounds. Recollecting at this point, the veridactical Israelites were, and are to this day, scattered throughout Africa and the nations of the entire world. It says, but the case is wildly different with regard to this further disclosures made in the following essay. All right, let's go down here. Okay, I'm gonna skip over that. It says, anyway, these inserted vowels and artifacts and literature most likely provide us with the pronunciation of Hebrew at that time rather than providing an authentic representation of the traditional dialect of Paleo Hebrew, since the authentic Israelites themselves at this time were not even present. Note also that these Jewish converts were also foreigners, because they were Edomites, to fulfill Ezekiel 36 and 5, as well as verse 6. All right? Ezekiel chapter 36 tells you that the Idumeans, which the word Idumea, that's the Greek way of saying Edom, that they will be occupying the land of Israel. That's why it says that what? They have a prime minister over there. If you're a prime minister, you're the ruler of that land. It don't matter if Palestinians, Philistine Jews, or any other people is there, even our people. It's not time for them to rule because we're in the time of the Gentiles. The scriptures say in 2 Ezra 6 and 9 that the Edomites will be ruling in these last days. So they will be controlling the whole inhabited planet Earth. How they doing that? Through the central banking system, right? They control all nations' money. They control all nations' money supply through their system. They have complete control, all right? So they occupy the land of Israel. They're the foreigners. Continuing on, it says, once again, the Paleo scripts only had consonants and no system for representing vowels. Recollecting that authentic Israelites fled their abode in 70 AD, and these events occurred some 1,000 years after when other nations occupied the land. Now you can see the difference in the alphabet. It says above is the Hebrew text of Genesis 1 and 1 written with the Aramaic alphabet, right? And then on the bottom of that, it says, and here is the same text, but it is modern Hebrew with the Nukudat added, unlike the Aramaic. It says, as you can see in the examples above, the Aramaic had no dots and dashes to represent vowels. However, some inscriptions of it made use of the martyrs lesionis, which is a lot less apparent at first glance since they utilize existing characters rather than dots and dashes. Now it's going into modern Hebrew, has different pronunciations to Paleo Hebrew. It says, zoom in a little bit. Previously, I expressed that any version of the Hebrew script that utilizes any system to represent vowels will not represent the Hebrew dialect as was verbalized by prophets such as Moses, and might I take a step further to add that they more so deliberately corrupted the authenticity of the language by doing so, concerning the integrity of its pristine dialect rather than preserving it. Because their whole thing was, we're going to add the Nukud or the Nukudat, which is vowel points to the Hebrew, the Paleo Hebrew characters, to revive the language. Because we don't know what the language sounds like, but by them doing that, they created an entirely different language. All right. Continuing on, it says, but it would be going much too far in praise of the Masoretic system of vowels to assert that it has completely preserved the ancient pronunciation of Hebrew or kept it exactly the same as it was from the very outset, meaning from the beginning. Proofs of interpolation of the vowel letters in the text of Hebrew Bible and grounds thence derived for a revision of its authorized English version, Charles William Ward, 1857. So these early scholars, they knew that this modern Hebrew, it ain't the same as Paleo Hebrew. So the fact that these guys is doing these live streams to try and show division, it proves that they sellouts. It proves that they're agents, that they're Highlands. It proves it by them saying that. All right. Now they don't use the name Yahweh, Yahushua, Lashma, Kodash. That's added unto the word. These guys is set up to bring confusion, to try to separate us from Yahweh, Yahushua. All right. Knowing the name of the Most High, Yahweh, as well as His only begotten Son, it's extremely important. It's literally the law, which they supposed to be so big on. They keep the law and they perfect, but then they using the word Yahshua. It's ridiculous, man. Continuing on, Charles William emphasizes greatly on the fact that neither Mitres Litionis nor the Mezorah was tantamount in dialect to the pristine iteration of the ancient Israelites, as spoken originally, and by which I would also elongate and emphasize the same sentiments towards modern Hebrew as verbalized today, which of course its structure is predicted upon the same vowel systems fabricated by the Masoretic scribes, right? It says, a remark which I may here by anticipation add. So this is Charles William Ward. He did research. He was comparing the Paleo Hebrew or modern Hebrew, and this is back in 1857, and he's explaining to you that the dialect, the vocalization, the ancient Israelites wasn't speaking this modern Hebrew, that this is an entirely different language. This is back in 1857. How much more in 2026? Continuing on, right? So it goes on to say, yep, a remark which I may here by anticipation add and will be found equally to apply to the matrice listeners after it shall have been proved that those letters do not any more than the points constitute part of the Hebrew scriptures as originally written. Proofs of the interpolation of the vowel letters in the text of the Hebrew Bible and grounds this derive for revision of its authorized English version. That's Charles William Ward, 1857. All right. So I mean, even when you read, before you read Genesis, like I said, there's a page there, and it tells you translated out of the original tongues. All right. Modern Hebrew is not an original tongue. That's something that was newly created by Ben Yahudi. All right. You have some people that say, oh, well, they spoke Yiddish. Yeah, that could be a part of it. That could be another dialect of their version of Hebrew, you know, under King Bulin and all that, with the secular letters, which shows their Jewish so-called conversion, right? But the point is, modern Hebrew is an entirely different language. You're not going to find the name of the Most High in that. That's something newly created, all right? Continuing on. So, with understanding of context of biblical history, even without any specific literature other than the scriptures itself, we can physically deduce how much the Israelites felt the disdurritum to maintain, and if necessary, return back to the original language and culture of their forefathers, and that a consummate loss of language and thus heritage and culture would consequently have been something unwelcome and unwarranted. It is even reflected in the verse inserted at the top of this book preceding its preface. It says Proto-Hebrew had a single vowel. In order of Erdenists, right? I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. It's a crazy word. Excuse me. It says babies essentially commence to make the consonant sounds B, M, P, D, T, N, G, K, W, H, F, V, T, H, S, Z, L, R during the first stages of their development of verbalization, commonly coined as baby babble, right? Due to order of our denuseness of engendering these consonant sounds, babies are scarcely more liable to verbalize words such as ball, making utilization of a long ah as a vowel, for they verbalize more intricate words further down the list, utilizing other vowels to engender words such as sock. All right. Yeah, because that's a part of the Paleo Hebrew. All right, the only two vowels is the ah, and I. Right. Just keep it going. It says the philosophy behind consonants and vowels. It says one thing to take note of is that the most facile and natural way of pronouncing consonants is by utilizing a long ah for each and every letter. For example, ba, ma, pa, da, ta, na, ga, ha, wa, ha, fa. They got va there, but you know that's not Hebrew. It says tha, sa, za, la, ra, just like babies are exponentially capable of. It says, skip it down here. So it says, so even if, for example, we were expected to read a sentence such as the one below, which omits the utilization or utilization of vowels of any sort, but the vowels otherwise used would be engendering a long ah sound, even without vowels indicted. The sentence will still remain pretty univocal. Let's zoom in on this right here. It says it only becomes problematic and univocal when we use words which include other vowels of the English language. But concerning Paleo Hebrew, which only had 22 consonants and no indicted vowels, the only unequivocal, probably pronouncing that better, unequivocal, right? It says natural vowel sound to pronounce consonants would derive from the utilization of a long ah for all consonants, which when indicted in English transliteration will be represented by the letter A. There is no quandary that arises with utilizing a long ah to pronounce all consonants, as it will prove to be with more involute systems. It says QDSH is then unequivocally pronounced Quadash, and even the name of the Most High becomes easily illegible, right? The Tetragrammaton, which is a 4-letter word, YHWH, and is thus pronounced Yahweh. It is the most unequivocal way of reading Paleo Hebrew scripts where no issues arise if utilized across the whole language consistently. It says Spinoza supports this position in his compendium as quoted below. And I'll read it. It says the language, it's talking about the Paleo Hebrew, right? The language had a single vowel, ah or a, which later evolved into other vowels according to synectical accent. Differentiation of vowels runs exactly along the morphological differentiation, right? It says to omit the vowels is odd unless vocalization was unessential or ambiguous. The creators of Proto-Hebrew, which is Paleo Hebrew, used the vowel only to pronounce consonants. These scholars understood that short immediate sound, go to the next page, would not do. It says, let's see. Yep, E is inconvenient and DBR sounds unpleasant. Using astrophic sounds would not have caused irregularities of DBR. All right, let's go down here. I mean, because y'all get the point. Yeah, that's pretty much it. All right, so back to the scriptures. So the point is, the modern Hebrew that these guys are trying to say is the real Hebrew, it's not. It's a completely different language. It's a new language. Chapter 3 and verse 9. So this is a future prophecy that's taking place right now, right? Ezekiel, the 37th chapter, the Lord is putting his breath in us, which is the Holy Spirit through Yahushua. And so part of having the Holy Spirit would be to understand or know that the modern Hebrew is not the same as the Paleo Hebrew. All right? Two totally different languages. The name of the Most High, as well as his only begotten Son, is only going to be found in the Paleo Hebrew. Zephaniah 3:9, for then will I turn to the people, what people? The Israelites, a pure language, the Lashuwan Kodash, the holy tongue, which is only the Paleo Hebrew, not modern Hebrew, not any other transliterated name of Joshua or God for the Most High. No, it's only found in the Paleo Hebrew. A pure language, right? The language of the heavens. That they may all call upon the name singular, not no transliteration, not carrying over the vowel sounds with the Nakud and, the transliteration of modern Hebrew to English and other languages. No. That they, the elect of the nation of Israel, may call upon the name of Yahweh to serve him with one consent. That's what the elect would do. All right? Now, let's read this. That's why Romans 11:7, I'm not going to get it. It says that the elect would obtain it, the rest will be blinded. Ecclesiasticus, known as the book of Sirach, 17 and 10, and the elect shall praise his holy name. What's the holy name? The name of the Most High is Yahweh, and Yahweh commanded us to worship Yahweh Shai and pray and believe on his name as well. I'm going to close it up with this as proof to what I just said. 2nd Ezra 2 and 45. It says, this is concerning the elect of the nation of Israel. It says, 2nd Ezra 2 and 45, he answered and said unto me, these be they that have put off the mortal clothing, because part of the new covenant is to what? Be changed, right? And put on the immortal. You can read about that in 1 Corinthians, the 15th chapter, and have confessed the name of God. I mean, come on. This will be going on while we are alive on the planet Earth. While the elect of the nation of Israel is alive presently on the planet Earth, even some brothers that are now deceased, they called upon the name of Yahweh and Yahweh Shai, all right? And have confessed the name of God in the Paleo Hebrew. Now are they crowned and receive palms. Let me go to the verse above. Let's see. Let's go to the next verse. I want that stood so stiffly part. This is 2nd Ezra 2 and... let's see. Yep. 2nd Ezra 2:47. So he answered and said unto me, it is the son of Yahweh, whom they, the elect of the nation of Israel, confess in the world. Were you going to confess it in the modern Hebrew, English, Greek, Latin? No, you're going to confess it in the Paleo Hebrew. It says, whom they have confessed in the world. Meaning while we was alive, we knew the Lashwan Kodash. We knew the Hebrew. Then began I greatly to commend them, the elect of the nation of Israel, that stood so stiffly for the name of Yahweh Shai. That's what we're doing. That's why I'm doing the video. I'm standing stiffly for the name of Yahweh and Yahweh Shai. And I'm personally going to do videos on it. All right? And brothers have already tackled, you know, these viewpoints and stuff like that. But since it's resurfaced, you know, you can never do enough videos going into the Paleo Hebrew and the name of Yahweh and Yahweh Shai. So that's pretty much it. Lord willing, you was edified. Shalom.